Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of absolute precision.
Well, like engineering almost.
Exactly. Like you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at it and says, there it is, broken.
Yeah.
It's incredibly binary.
Yeah, and it's deeply comforting to have that certainty. We really want our world to be visible and categorized and fixed.
But then you step into the world of human potential, right?
Right.
Into the reality of leadership and achievement, and suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless.
Oh, entirely useless.
Right. We look at successful people, and we try to diagnose their brilliance as something clean and innate. Society tells you that you are either like a math person or you aren't.
Yeah, we definitely treat the word smart like an undeniable medical fact.
We really do. And we throw it around as the highest possible compliment.
Yeah.
But what if praising someone's intelligence is actually the most damaging thing you can do to their development?
Yeah.
What if the most successful people in the world, I mean everyone from NASA commanders to heavyweight boxing champions, what if they aren't the ones who just coast on natural brilliance, but the ones who actively seek out the friction of failing?
That is the exact paradox we're exploring today. Because to understand it, it requires completely dismantling our, conventional wisdom about talent and effort.
And how the human brain actually processes failure.
Yeah. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are talking directly to you today, pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources to figure out how to essentially upgrade the operating system of your mind.
It's a great stack today.
It really is. We are looking at Carol Dweck's groundbreaking work, Mindset, along with Gabriel Weinberg and Lauren McCann's Super Thinking. Plus, we've got some targeted research on neuroplasticity, grit, and educational psychology.
So much good stuff in there.
Right. And our mission today is clear. By understanding the physical mechanics of your brain, adopting the right cognitive frameworks, and deploying specific mental models, you can fundamentally change how you make high-stakes decisions and how you lead others through uncertainty, which is huge. And to do that, we really have to start at the foundational biological level.
Right.
Because the beliefs you hold about your own abilities, they don't just dictate your mood, they literally shape the biological architecture of your brain.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
Because the way we usually talk about the brain is just, it's fundamentally flawed.
Oh, completely.
We use these lazy tech metaphors, right? Comparing the brain to like a computer's hard drive that just fills up with data until it literally runs out of space.
Yeah, the my brain is full excuse.
Exactly. But the sources point to neuroplasticity. The brain isn't a hard drive at all. It's this incredibly dynamic physical structure that changes shape and mass and density based on the friction you expose it to.
And the mechanism behind this is absolutely brilliant. I mean, in your cerebral cortex, you have roughly 100 billion neurons.
Which is a staggering number to even think about.
Right. And when you attempt something new and difficult, say, trying to learn a complex new software at work or maybe a new language, you experience this feeling of deep frustration.
Like a literal headache sometimes.
Exactly. But that frustration isn't a sign that you're hitting your limits. It is the literal physical sensation of your neurons firing, trying to connect across synapses.
So the struggle is the biology working.
Exactly. And here is where the biology gets incredible. When you push through that struggle, your brain responds by wrapping those successful neural pathways in this fatty substance called myelin.
Myelination. Yeah, this is the crucial part that I think people miss. It's essentially biological insulation, right?
That is exactly what it is. Just like, insulation on a copper wire prevents an electrical signal from leaking and makes it travel faster.
Right. It keeps the current strong.
Myelin does the same thing. It insulates your neural pathways. So the more you struggle and eventually succeed, the thicker that myelin sheath becomes.
And so the signal travels faster and more efficiently.
Yes. But here's the catch. Your brain only deploys myelin when it detects the friction of effort. If you only do things you're already good at, those pathways, they don't get upgraded.
Wow. Which brings us to the real weight of Carol Dweck's research. Most of you listening are probably already familiar with the broad strokes of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset.
Sure, it's pretty well known at this point.
Right. In a fixed mindset, you believe your talents are carved in stone, which means any failure is a permanent indictment of your identity.
Right. It means you are a failure.
Exactly. Whereas in a growth mindset, you see failure as a mechanism for development. But the biological implication here is what's truly staggering.
It really is.
If you operate in a fixed mindset, and you actively avoid difficult things just to protect your reputation as the smart one, you are literally starving your brain of myelin.
You are physically limiting your neurological potential. I mean, consider the actor Christopher Reeve.
Oh, Superman, yeah.
Right. In 1995, he had this horrific horseback riding accident that left him completely paralyzed from the neck down.
Just a devastating tragedy.
And the medical establishment delivered what was essentially a completely fixed verdict. They said, the spinal cord is irreversibly damaged. Your efforts to move are medically futile. You simply must accept the paralysis.
But Reeve entirely rejected that premise, didn't he?
Completely. He applied this ferocious growth mindset to his own biology. He spent hours every single day strapped to these machines, just staring at his motionless limbs.
Wow.
And he was intensely trying to force his brain to communicate with his body. It was an agonizing level of friction. I mean, the doctors thought it was pointless.
Because according to the textbook, it was.
Right. But within 5 years, he basically defied the fundamental odds of neuroscience. He regained movement in his hands and his legs.
Which is just unheard of.
Yeah. He was still miles from a full recovery, obviously, but his relentless effort literally forced his nervous system to build new functional pathways around the damaged areas of his spine.
That is an incredible testament to recovery.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have to push back on this a little bit when we talk about like extreme achievement.
Okay, sure.
Because rehab is one thing. But what about highly competitive, aggressive arenas? Like professional sports. I mean, you can't just growth mindset your way into being 7 feet tall.
Right.
Right? Or having fast-twitch muscle fibers. Doesn't baseline genetics eventually dictate the ceiling?
What's fascinating here is how Dweck actually addressed that kind of baseline question. Let's look at her famous puzzle study with children.
Okay.
To see how mindset interacts with baseline intelligence, researchers brought in these kids and gave them progressively tougher puzzles while tracking their responses.
And what did they find?
Well, the way these kids reacted to the escalating difficulty, it didn't correlate with their IQ scores or their socioeconomic background or their natural baseline intelligence at all.
Really? None of that mattered?
Nope. It correlated entirely with their mindset.
So what was the actual physical response? Like, what did the researchers see?
As the puzzles became nearly impossible, the kids with a fixed mindset physiologically shut down. Their cortisol spiked. They gave up just to avoid looking foolish.
They protected the ego.
Exactly. But the kids with a growth mindset, they leaned in. They visibly relished the challenge. And brain scans actually confirmed that in those moments of joyful struggle, their neural networks were actively expanding.
Wow.
They were building a higher cognitive ceiling in real time.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because if we take that concept out of the lab and we step directly into, say, a boxing ring,
Oh, I love this example.
it completely unravels the myth of the natural physical specimen. So in 1964, you have Sonny Liston.
Right.
And Liston was an absolute genetic freak of nature. Massive size, terrifying power, and 84-inch reach. I mean, he was built in a biological laboratory to destroy people in a boxing ring.
He was terrifying. Liston was the undeniable natural. Every metric said he should win effortlessly.
Right. And he was fighting a 22-year-old Cassius Clay, who obviously would later become Muhammad Ali. And Ali did not have Liston's sheer brute strength or traditional physical dominance.
No, he really didn't.
But Ali won. Because he utilized a growth mindset to study his opponent like a psychologist, Ali realized he couldn't beat Liston with pure physical force, so he created immense psychological friction instead.
Right. He got inside his head.
Literally. He rented a bus, drove to Liston's house at 2 in the morning, and just started shouting that Liston was a big, ugly bear.
Yeah, just completely unhinged behavior.
But it was calculated. Ali systematically studied Liston's out-of-the-ring paranoia, figured out that Liston was absolutely terrified of crazy people, and made Liston believe he was genuinely insane. The biological natural loss to the obsessive learner who was willing to experiment and look foolish.
And we see the exact inverse happen when immense natural talent is trapped inside a fixed mindset.
Like who?
Look at tennis legend John McEnroe. He was arguably the most naturally gifted player of his generation. #1 in the world for 4 years.
Total natural?
But he framed every single setback through a fixed mindset. And the thing is, if you believe your talent is innate and flawless, losing cannot be your fault.
It has to be an external factor.
Always. It's the temperature or the food he ate.
The cameraman. Right.
Yes. He famously lost the 1984 French Open final after leading 2-0 simply because A cameraman took off a headset and the noise distracted him.
Wow.
Setbacks fundamentally threatened his identity, so he required a constant stream of excuses.
Yeah.
Contrast that with Pete Sampras at Wimbledon in 2000.
Okay, set the scene for us.
He's facing Pat Rafter. He's down one set, and he's down 4-1 in the tiebreaker of the second set. He is physically exhausted and on the brink of a massive, humiliating defeat.
And Sampras doesn't look for an excuse. He doesn't blame the grass.
No.
He sits on the changeover, and he actively searches his memory for a frame of reference. He thinks about past matches where he was similarly destroyed in the first set, endured the friction, and came back to win.
Yeah.
He uses his past failures as the exact blueprint to navigate the current struggle. And he wins his 13th Grand Slam.
Which perfectly illustrates Angela Duckworth's concept of grit. Grit, which she defines as courage, conscientiousness, and long-term resilience. That is the engine that powers the growth mindset.
So it's the action part of the belief.
Exactly. You can understand neuroplasticity all day long, but grit is the actual fuel that keeps you sitting at the desk or sweating on the court when the friction becomes physically painful.
And high-stakes organizations are obsessed with this specific trait.
Yeah.
Like if you look at how NASA selects astronaut candidates, you would assume they want the pristine resumes.
The perfect people, yeah.
Right. The people who got straight A's, aced every flight simulation, and just never failed a mission.
But actually, NASA actively rejects those people.
Which sounds crazy at first.
It does. But a pristine resume indicates a lack of friction. If a candidate has only ever experienced success, NASA has absolutely no idea how their brain will react when things go catastrophically wrong.
And things will go wrong in space.
Inevitably. So instead, they specifically hunt for candidates who have experienced significant, crushing professional or personal failures and who systematically rebuilt themselves afterward.
That makes so much sense.
Because when you are in a tin can a million miles from Earth and an oxygen tank ruptures, you don't want the person who has never faced a setback. You want the person whose myelin has been forged by disaster.
Okay, so if grit keeps us moving forward and myelination speeds up our brain's processing, what happens when we're moving forward in completely the wrong direction?
Ah, that's the danger.
Because grit, without good judgment, just means you're going to hit a brick wall at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, you could be the most resilient person on Earth, but if your underlying logic is flawed, you will still fail.
And that is exactly where Gabriel Weinberg and Lauren McCann's book, Superthinking, becomes the crucial second half of this equation.
Right.
We have to move from the biology of the brain to the software of decision-making.
Yeah.
We really have to talk about mental models.
The way I think about this, relying on your pure intuition is like driving on a smoothly paved highway. It's effortless, it's fast, and your subconscious handles all the micro adjustments.
Yeah, Daniel Kahneman calls this fast thinking.
Exactly. And it's great for reading the mood of a room or doing basic math. But intuition is completely useless when the paved road abruptly ends and you find yourself in the middle of a dense, rocky forest.
You're fucked.
For complex, unprecedented high-stakes decisions, you need manual four-wheel drive. You need deliberate frameworks.
And mental models are that four-wheel drive system. They are cognitive tools that simplify messy realities into actionable patterns. Because if you rely on conventional wisdom or just gut instinct when the terrain is complex, the results are often disastrous.
So how do we avoid that?
To avoid this, Weinberg and McCann introduce first principles thinking. You don't look at how things have always been done. You actively strip away every single assumption until you are left only with undeniable truths, and you build your solution from there.
The ultimate historical example of this is Copernicus. For centuries, the smartest people on Earth intuitively believed the Earth was the center of the universe.
I mean, it felt right.
Right. The ground beneath them wasn't moving, and the sun appeared to literally cross the sky.
But the math of planetary orbits constantly required these messy, complicated workarounds just to fit that assumption.
So Copernicus applied first principles thinking. He threw out the emotional assumption that humanity was the center of everything. He looked purely at the undeniable mathematical data of planetary motion and realized a heliocentric universe, the planets revolving around the sun, was the only model that logically fit the data.
And he completely changed human history. If we connect this to the bigger picture, mental models also protect us from the nightmare of unintended consequences.
Oh, this is a huge one.
Yeah, there is a massive blind spot in human intuition where we assume that a logical incentive will automatically produce a logical result.
And it rarely does.
Almost never. The Cobra effect perfectly captures this trap. So, During British colonial rule in India, the government was terrified of the venomous cobra population in Delhi.
Understandably so.
Right. So they deployed a highly intuitive, incentive-based solution. They offered a cash bounty for every dead cobra citizens brought to the authorities.
Pay for dead snakes, get fewer snakes. It sounds like flawless logic.
But human behavior is incredibly adaptable. Enterprising locals quickly realized that hunting wild, dangerous cobras was inefficient.
So what did they do?
They started breeding cobras in the safety of their own homes, exclusively to kill them and collect the government bounty.
That's amazing. And terrible.
Right. And when the British authorities finally realized they were funding a massive snake breeding syndicate, they abruptly canceled the bounty program.
Oh no, so what happened to the snakes?
The breeders, now stuck with thousands of worthless venomous snakes, simply released them into the city. The cobra population ended up significantly worse than before the intervention.
Wow, so the cure actively magnified the disease.
Precisely.
And this isn't just, some historical quirk. This happens in modern boardrooms every single day.
Yeah.
Under what is known as Goodhart's Law.
Yes.
The law states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
A classic illustration of this comes from a Soviet nail factory. The central planners needed construction materials, so they gave the factory a strict quota based on the total number of nails produced.
Let me guess. The workers optimized for the metric.
Exactly. They produced millions of microscopic, incredibly fragile nails that were completely useless for construction.
But they hit the quota.
They did. So the central planners saw the absurdity of this, and they changed the target. They told the factory, okay, your new quota is based on the total weight of the nails produced.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Predictably, the factory responded by forging a handful of gigantic, overwhelmingly heavy nails that no one could actually use.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But also terrifying for a business.
The metric was achieved perfectly in both scenarios, but the fundamental goal-creating, usable building materials was completely obliterated because the incentive was poorly modeled.
And we see this today, right? Like when call center employees hang up on frustrated customers just to keep their average handle time metric low.
Exactly.
But, hearing all of this, the flaws of intuition, the traps of incentives, it can induce a sense of absolute paralysis.
It really can.
If our gut instincts are wrong and our logical plans can backfire so spectacularly, how do you actually make a confident choice when the stakes are high?
Well, you cure the paralysis by matching the complexity of the decision to the complexity of the mental model.
Okay, break that down.
We all default to the classic pro-con list for everything, right?
Yeah.
But pro-con lists are incredibly dangerous for major life choices because they suffer from a massive grass is greener bias.
Right.
They treat a minor annoyance and a major catastrophe as equal bullet points, and they completely ignore probability.
So you have to upgrade your tools.
Precisely. For a medium complexity decision, you use a cost-benefit analysis. You stop listing abstract pros and cons, and you force yourself to assign specific, tangible values to the friction.
Give me an example.
Okay. If you are debating taking a new job in a different state, you don't just write, con moving is annoying, you quantify it. You write, moving will cost $10,000 and 40 hours of severe stress. Then you weigh that against the exact monetary and lifestyle value of the new salary. It removes the vague emotional dread and replaces it with concrete data.
But what about the truly complex decisions, the ones shrouded in uncertainty where the outcome isn't guaranteed regardless of what you choose?
That is where you deploy a decision tree. A decision tree forces you to factor in probability alongside the tangible value.
How does that work in practice?
Let's say you're a director at a company and you are offered a highly visible, high-stress project. If you just use intuition, your amygdala might panic at the fear of failure and tell you to decline.
Right, play it safe.
But a decision tree maps it out logically. Branch 1. You accept the project. You estimate there is an 80% chance of success, which will lead to a promotion worth $100,000 to your career.
Okay.
But there is a 20% chance the project spectacularly fails, which might cost you $50,000 in lost bonuses and reputational damage.
So you calculate the expected mathematical value.
Yeah.
80% of a $100 rate is $80K. And you subtract the 20% risk of the $50K loss, which is $10.
Right.
So taking the risky project has a positive expected value of $70,000.
Yes. And if the safe route staying in your current role doing nothing new only guarantees a $10,000 standard raise, the math undeniably shows you should take the risk.
That's a huge difference.
Decision trees take the emotional terror out of the unknown. They move the decision-making process out of the fear centers of your brain and into the logical prefrontal cortex.
But what does this all mean? When you apply these frameworks to business leadership, you really start to see why massive companies rise and fall.
You really do.
In business, the most dangerous mental model you're fighting against is inertia. An organization making money doing things one way will violently resist changing, even when the market shifts.
Blockbuster is the classic example there.
Exactly. But look at Netflix. In the early 2000s, they had massive inertia as a highly profitable DVD-by-mail company. But they used these mental models to see the shifting landscape. They calculated the expected value of broadband internet, overcame their own internal inertia, and pivoted entirely to streaming.
They leveraged the mental model of momentum, finding the exact tipping point where internet speeds could actually support their vision.
Right.
Furthermore, if you want a true competitive moat in your industry, Weinberg and McCann suggest hunting for secrets.
What I mean by secrets.
These are first-principle insights that the rest of the market has assumed are impossible. Tesla found a secret in battery management software, proving that electric vehicles didn't have to look like glorified golf carts.
Right. They made them cool.
And they built an insurmountable lead while legacy automakers were just paralyzed by their own inertia.
It is incredibly empowering to realize you can arm yourself with these tools. But here is the real friction point, I think.
Okay, what is it?
It is one thing to cultivate a growth mindset and deploy decision trees in your own private office. It is an entirely different beast to scale this across a team of a dozen employees.
Or a classroom of students.
Exactly. People who are all secretly terrified of making a mistake.
Yeah.
How do you actually cultivate this culture in others?
The answer lies in the most counterintuitive piece of research in our entire stack of sources.
Which is?
If you want to build a resilient team, you have to completely change how you praise people. Praising someone's innate ability actively sabotages them.
This goes back to Carol Dweck's IQ test study, which is just mind-blowing in its implications.
It truly is. Dweck gave a large group of students a nonverbal IQ test. Most of them did quite well. She then split the students into two groups.
Okay.
The first group was praised for their intelligence. Wow, you scored really well. You must be incredibly smart at this.
Which sounds like great encouragement.
Right. The second group, however, was praised purely for their friction. Wow, you got a good score. She must have worked incredibly hard at this.
It seems like such a subtle, almost harmless difference in semantics.
But the fallout was drastic. When the researchers subsequently offered the students a choice to either take a safe, easy test or a highly challenging test where they would likely make mistakes, the group praised for being smart overwhelmingly refused the challenge.
Wow. They didn't want to risk the label.
Exactly. They had been handed a fragile identity, and they wanted to protect their smart quotient at all costs. But the group praised for their effort. Over 90% of them eagerly chose the harder task.
Sound 90%.
Yeah. Labeling someone as a natural immediately puts them on the defensive.
And we see this exact dynamic destroy billion-dollar corporate cultures. Look at the stark contrast between Enron and IBM.
Oh, perfect examples.
At Enron, CEO Jeff Skilling built a culture entirely around a fixed mindset. He famously believed he was the absolute smartest guy in the room, and he aggressively intimidated his executives. The culture demanded that everyone project an aura of effortless genius.
Which inevitably creates fatal groupthink.
Right.
In a fixed mindset culture, asking a clarifying question or admitting you don't understand a financial model is treated as a weakness. So, entire departments of Enron executives pretended they understood the fraudulent accounting.
Because no one wanted to look dumb.
No one challenged the leader because no one wanted to lose their genius label, and the company completely collapsed into bankruptcy.
Then you look at Lou Gerstner taking over IBM in 1993. The company was drowning in elitism. Executives were fighting turf wars to protect their status.
It's a mess.
Gerstner walked in with a militant growth mindset. He didn't care about projecting an image of the omniscient CEO. He immediately disbanded the exclusive management committees.
No, just got rid of him.
Yeah. He broke down the hierarchy and tied executive compensation to the messy, collaborative execution of the whole company. Wall Street actually mocked him at first for not having a flashy, visionary strategy. But he focused his team entirely on the unglamorous friction of daily improvement, and IBM's stock grew by 800%.
The lesson here is incredibly practical for anyone managing a team or, raising a family. You have to embrace radical candor.
What does that look like day to day?
You must prioritize actual progress over people-pleasing. If an employee's project fails, you do not coddle them with fixed mindset platitudes like, well, you're still a superstar.
Right, that doesn't help.
You sit down and ruthlessly but kindly analyze the process that led to the failure.
You also have to deploy the power of the word yet. When a team member hits a wall and says, I just can't figure out this software, you immediately reframe it. You say, you haven't figured it out yet.
And crucially, you must stop praising fast, frictionless work.
Oh, this is a big one.
If an employee or a student finishes a task perfectly in record time without breaking a sweat, your instinct is to say you're a genius.
Sure, because they did it so fast.
This raises an important question. How often do we accidentally reward our teams for quick, unchallenging work, thereby actively discouraging their resilience? Instead, your response should be, I apologize. I gave you a task that was entirely too easy and I wasted your time. Let's find something that actually challenges your capabilities.
I love that.
You have to consciously signal that you value the productive struggle, not just the easy win.
So let's pull all of these threads together. We have journeyed from the microscopic biology of your brain, understanding how the friction of struggle literally insulates your neural pathways with myelin, to the absolute necessity of grit to keep you moving forward.
It's all connected.
We've replaced the flawed autopilot of human intuition with the robust four-wheel drive mental models of first principles and decision trees. And we've seen how to build a resilient culture by praising the painful process rather than the innate talent.
And this framework applies to every facet of the human experience. Even in a romantic relationship, a fixed mindset tells you that rejection is a permanent judgment of your worth, leading you to shut down or lash out.
Right.
But a growth mindset allows you to process the pain, understand the dynamic, and actively adapt. Your brain, your habits, and your environment are entirely malleable.
You are not a static machine.
Mhm.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final urgent thought to ponder. Something that builds on these sources, but points to a modern crisis.
We have spent this entire time discussing how you must consciously seek out friction to rewire your brain and deploy logical models. But consider the environment we live in today.
Okay.
If our physical brains require the struggle of encountering new, difficult ideas to grow denser neural networks, what are we doing to our societal cognitive ceiling in an era where social media algorithms are explicitly designed to remove all friction?
Oh, wow.
What happens to a population that lives inside digital echo chambers, constantly fed information that effortlessly confirms their pre-existing fixed beliefs?
If the brain only grows through resistance, a frictionless world is a profoundly dangerous place. That is a vital question to take with you today. So stop protecting your reputation as the smart one. Go find a puzzle, a project, or an idea that is entirely too hard for you, and let the friction do its work. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep failing, and keep growing.